Microeconomics. Supply and demand is perhaps one of the most fundamental concepts of economics, and it is the backbone of a market economy. Demand refers to how much quantity a product or service is desired by buyers. The quantity demanded is the amount of a product people are willing to buy at a certain price. The relationship between price and quantity demanded is known as the demand relationship. Supply represents how much the market can offer. The quantity supplied refers to the number of certain goods producers are willing to supply when receiving a certain price. The correlation between price and how much of a good or service is supplied to the market is known as the supply relationship. Price, therefore, reflects supply and demand. The relationship between demand and supply underlies the forces behind the allocation of resources. In market economy theories, demand and supply theory will allocate resources in the most efficient way possible. How? Let the U.S. take a closer look at the law of demand and the law of supply. Law of demand. The law of demand states that, if all other factors remain equal, the higher the price of a good, the fewer people will demand that good. In other words, the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. The amount of goods that buyers purchase at a higher price is less because as the price of a good goes up, so does the opportunity cost of buying that good. As a result, people will naturally avoid buying a product that will force them to forego the consumption of something else they value more. The chart below shows that the curve is a downward slope. A, B, and C are points on the demand curve. Each point on the curve reflects a direct correlation between quantities demanded, 0, and price, P. So, at point A, the quantity demanded will be Q, and the price will be PL, and so on. The demand relationship curve illustrates the negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. The higher the price of a good, the lower the quantity demanded, A, and the lower the price, the more the good will be in demand, C. Law of supply. Like the law of demand, the law of supply demonstrates the quantities that will be sold at a certain price. But unlike the law of demand, the supply relationship shows an upward slope. Law of supply. This means that the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. Producers supply more at a higher price because selling a higher quantity at a higher price increases revenue. A, B, and C are points on the supply curve. Each point on the curve reflects a direct correlation between quantities supplied, 0, and price, P. At point B, the quantity supplied will be Q and the price will be P2, and so on. Time and supply. Unlike the demand relationship, however, the supply relationship is a factor of time. Time is important to supply because suppliers must, but cannot always, react quickly to a change in demand or price. So it is important to try and determine whether a price change that is caused by demand will be temporary or permanent. Let's say there's a sudden increase in the demand and price for umbrellas in an unexpected rainy season. Suppliers may simply accommodate demand by using their production equipment more intensively. If, however, there is a climate change, and the population will need umbrellas year-round, the change in demand and price will be expected to be long-term. Suppliers will have to change their equipment and production facilities in order to meet the long-term levels of demand. Supply and demand relationship. Now that we know the laws of supply and demand, let's turn to an example to show how supply and demand affect the price. Imagine that a special edition CD of your favorite band is released for $20. Because the record company's previous analysis showed that consumers will not demand CDs at a price higher than $20. Only 10 CDs were released because the opportunity cost is too high for suppliers to produce more. If, however, the 10 CDs are demanded by 20 people, the price will subsequently rise because, according to the demand relationship, as demand increases, so does the price. Consequently, the rise in price should prompt more CDs to be supplied, as the supply relationship shows that the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. If, however, there are 30 CDs produced and demand is still at 20, the price will not be pushed up because the supply more than accommodates demand. In fact, after the 20 consumers have been satisfied with their CD purchases, the price of the leftover CDs may drop as CD producers attempt to sell the remaining 10 CDs. The lower price will then make the CD more available to people who had previously decided that the opportunity cost of buying the CD at 920 was too high. Equilibrium, when supply and demand are equal, that is, when the supply function and demand function intersect, the economy is said to be at equilibrium. At this point, the allocation of goods is at its most efficient because the amount of goods being supplied is the same as the amount of goods being demanded. Thus, everyone, individuals, firms, or countries, is satisfied with the current economic condition. At the given price, suppliers are selling all the goods that they have produced, and consumers are getting all the goods that they are demanding. As you can see on the chart, equilibrium occurs at the intersection of the demand and supply curve, which indicates no allocative inefficiency. At this point, the price of the goods will be P and the quantity will be Q. These figures are referred to as equilibrium price and quantity. In the real marketplace, equilibrium can only ever be reached in theory, so the prices of goods and services are constantly changing in relation to fluctuations in demand and supply. Disequilibrium occurs whenever the price or quantity is not equal to P or Q. 1. Excess supply. If the price is set too high, excess supply will be created within the economy and there will be allocative inefficiency. At price, P1 the quantity of goods that the producers wish to supply is indicated by Q2. At place, however, the quantity that the consumers want to consume is Q1, a quantity much less than Q2. Because Q2 is greater than Q1, too much is being produced and too little is being consumed. The suppliers are trying to produce more goods, which they hope to sell to increase profits, but those consuming the goods will find the product less attractive and purchase less because the price is too high. Excess demand is created when the price is set below the equilibrium price. Because the price is so low, too many consumers want the good while producers are not making enough of it. Conversely, if the price of a bottle of beer was $2 and the quantity supplied decreased from Q to Q2, then there would be a shift in the supply of beer. Like a shift in the demand curve, a shift in the supply curve implies that the original supply curve has changed, meaning that the quantity supplied is affected by a factor other than price. A shift in the supply curve would occur, for instance, a natural disaster caused a mass shortage of hops. Beer manufacturers would be forced to supply less beer for the same price. Elasticity, the degree to which demand or supply curve reacts to a change in price, is the curve's elasticity. Elasticity varies among products because some products may be more essential to the consumer. Products that are necessities are more insensitive to price changes because consumers would continue buying these products despite price increases. Conversely, a price increase of a good or service that is considered less of a necessity will deter more consumers because the opportunity cost of buying the product will become too high. A good or service is considered to be highly elastic if a slight change in price leads to a sharp change in the quantity demanded or supplied. Usually, these kinds of products are readily available in the market and a person may not necessarily need them in his or her daily life. On the other hand, an inelastic good or service is one in which changes in price witness only modest changes in the quantity demanded or supplied, if any at all. These goods tend to be things that are more of a necessity to the consumer in his or her daily life. To determine the elasticity of the supply or demand curves, we can use this simple equation: elasticity equals % change in quantity / % change in price. If elasticity is greater than or equal to 1, the curve is considered to be elastic. If it is less than 1, the curve is said to be inelastic. As we mentioned previously, the demand curve is a negative slope, and if there is a large decrease in the quantity demanded with a small increase in price, the demand curve looks flatter, or more horizontal. This flatter curve means that the good or service in question is elastic. The elasticity of supply works similarly. If a change in price results in a big change in the amount supplied, the supply curve appears natter and is considered elastic. Elasticity in this case would be greater than or equal to 1, t. Demand elasticity is a measure of how responsive demand is to changes in price. There are three main factors that affect demand elasticity: the availability of substitutes. The more substitutes there are for a good, the more elastic the demand will be. This is because consumers have more options if the price of one good increases, so they are more likely to switch to a substitute good. For example, coffee has many substitutes, such as tea, soda, and energy drinks. This means that the demand for coffee is relatively elastic. The amount of income available to spend on the good. If consumers have less income available to spend, they will be more sensitive to changes in price. This is because they have to make more choices about how to spend their money. For example, if the price of gasoline goes up, consumers may have to choose to drive less or to switch to a more fuel-efficient car. Demand elasticity can also vary over time. In the short run, consumers may be less willing to change their consumption habits, even if prices change. This is because they may not have time to find substitutes or to make other changes. However, in the long run, consumers have more time to adjust their behavior, so demand elasticity is generally higher in the long run.